My name is Violetta, and I'm 34 years old. I was sitting in that lawyer's office staring at the mahogany table while my sister wore that smug expression she'd perfected since childhood. Our mother had passed 3 months ago after battling cancer for 3 years, and now we were here for the will reading. I knew something was wrong the moment my sister arrived wearing designer everything from her Louis Vuitton bag to her Louboutin heels. The inequality between us had always existed, but today it felt heavier than ever. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, please like and subscribe to hear how this story unfolds. Let me tell you about myself properly. I'm a single mother of 2 beautiful children working as a registered nurse at Chicago General Hospital. My days consist of 12-hour shifts rushing home to help with homework and falling asleep to the sound of medical equipment still ringing in my ears. My sister Alexandra, who everyone calls Alex, lives in a Manhattan penthouse with her investment banker husband. Their world revolves around charity galas and weekend trips to the Hamptons. But our story starts much earlier than that. I was adopted when I was 3 years old, a detail my mother never let me forget, though she swore she loved me the same. Alex came along 2 years later, their biological daughter, their miracle baby, after years of trying. From the moment she arrived, everything shifted. Where I got hand-me-downs from church donations, Alex got boutique dresses. While I took the bus to public school, Alex had a driver for her private academy. My father was the equalizer in our family. He worked construction, coming home with concrete dust in his hair and love in his heart for both his girls. He'd sneak me extra lunch money when Mum wasn't looking, taught me how to change a tire, and told me I was worth more than anyone could ever make me feel. When I was 16, a scaffolding accident took him from us. The foreman showed up at our door in the rain-hard hat in his hands, unable to meet my mother's eyes. After Dad died, the divide between Alex and me became a canyon. Mum used Dad's life insurance for Alex's education at Yale, while I worked 2 jobs to afford community college. I served coffee to business people at 5 in the morning, then cleaned offices until midnight, studying during my breaks. Alex joined sororities and dated boys with trust funds. I dated textbooks and my alarm clock. When I finally became a nurse, Mum seemed proud for exactly 1 day. Then Alex graduated with her MBA, and that became the only achievement worth mentioning at family dinners. Alex married Harrison Wellington III, a man whose name alone cost more than my annual salary. Their wedding had 300 guests and a string quartet. I got married at City Hall to a mechanic named Tony, who left me 2 years later for a bartender, leaving me with 2 kids and a broken transmission. The last 3 years changed everything. Mum's diagnosis came on a Tuesday, pancreatic cancer stage 3. The doctor gave her 6 months. She lived for 3 years out of pure stubbornness and experimental treatments that I researched every night after my shifts. Alex flew in from New York exactly twice a year, staying at the Four Seasons, visiting for 2 hours at a time, because hospitals and I, quote, depressed her. I moved Mum into my apartment when she couldn't manage stairs anymore. My kids gave up their playroom to become Grandma's bedroom. I learned to administer IV medications, manage feeding tubes, and hold her hair back during the vomiting that came with chemotherapy. I spent my savings, my retirement fund, and maxed out 2 credit cards on experimental treatments insurance wouldn't cover. Alex sent flowers, expensive arrangements that died within a week, just like her promises to visit more often. She hired nurses she found online, never checking references, never staying to see if they were kind. One nurse left Mum sitting in a soiled bed for 3 hours. I fired her and never told Alex. What was the point? She'd already moved on to planning her next vacation to Turks and Caicos. During those long nights in the hospital, Mum would hold my hand and speak in Polish, her first language, that she'd almost forgotten until illness brought it back. I downloaded language apps, learnt basic phrases just to understand her memories. She told me about growing up in Warsaw, about her parents, who died when she was 20, about coming to America with nothing but a suitcase and determination. The last time I saw Mum lucid, really lucid, she gripped my hand with surprising strength. Her eyes, clouded by medication, suddenly cleared. She looked at me, really looked at me, and said something that made no sense at the time. "You'll understand soon, my dear Violetta. Love isn't measured in blood, it's measured in presence." I thought it was the morphine talking. Alex called once during Mum's final week. Not to check on Mum, but to ask about the house. She wanted to know if Mum had updated the kitchen recently, because it would affect resale value. Mum died that night, holding my hand, speaking Polish words I'd learned just for her. Alex's flight didn't land until after the funeral home had already taken her away. The law office occupied the 40th floor of a downtown high-rise that scraped the Chicago sky. Mr. Harrison, our family lawyer for 30 years, had scheduled the reading for 2 in the afternoon. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing my only black dress that wasn't scrubs my kids at school, with a promise I'd pick them up after this was over. The waiting room smelled like leather and old money, 2 things I'd never possess. Alex arrived 30 minutes late in her Tesla, the one with the gull-wing doors that probably cost more than I made in 2 years. She swept in complaining about traffic from O'Hare, as if flying in from New York for one day was such an inconvenience. Her husband hadn't even come. Too busy with a merger, she explained to no one in particular, checking her phone constantly. The conference room held more surprises than just the mahogany table I'd been staring at. Aunt Dorothy sat in the corner, Mum's older sister, who lived in Florida and only visited for funerals. She nodded at me, ignored Alex. Margaret occupied another chair, Mum's best friend since high school, the one who brought casseroles during the worst of the chemo. She squeezed my shoulder as I passed, but the young woman by the window caught my attention most. She couldn't have been older than 25, with sad dark eyes that kept finding mine across the room. She wore a simple blue dress and held a folder like it contained state secrets. When I smiled at her, she looked away quickly, almost guilty. Alex didn't even notice her, too busy texting and complaining about the parking situation. Mr. Harrison entered exactly at 2, carrying a box of documents that seemed heavier than paper should be. His usual confidence seemed shaky, like he knew something we didn't. He'd been Dad's friend first, their poker buddy, the one who'd helped Mum navigate widowhood's legal maze. Now he adjusted his glasses repeatedly, a nervous tic I'd never seen before. The reading began with small bequests, the kind that made sense. Aunt Dorothy received Mum's jewelry collection pieces brought from Poland that Alex had always called old-fashioned. Margaret got the art pieces she'd always admired, paintings Mum had collected from local artists over 40 years. The church received a donation. The cancer ward, where Mum spent so much time, got another. Alex barely listened already on her phone with a realtor discussing the house. I heard her mention renovation potential and original hardwood floors. She'd measured the rooms during Mum's wake, I remembered. Taken photos while guests offered condolences. My stomach turned, but I stayed silent. I always stayed silent. My phone buzzed. My son asking if he could go to soccer practice, my daughter wondering about dinner. The babysitter needed to leave by 5. Real life, the kind Alex never worried about pulling at me even here. I typed quick responses, promised I'd be home soon, wondered what I'd inherit. Maybe Mum's cookbook, the one with recipes written in Polish and English, stained with decades of family dinners, Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, that sound lawyers make when they're about to change everything. He looked at me first, then Alex, then back to his papers. The estate of Maria Kowalski Thompson, he began, consists of various assets totaling $15.5 million. The room went silent. Even Alex stopped typing. I must have misheard. Mum lived in a 3-bedroom house with a leaky roof. She clipped coupons. She bought generic cereal. She darned socks instead of buying new ones. $15 million was a different universe, not our mother's world. But Mr. Harrison continued explaining about the family business. Dad had started investments. Mum had made property she'd inherited and never mentioned. Alex recovered first, of course she did. She sat straighter, already spending money that didn't exist an hour ago. I sat frozen, remembering nights Mum claimed she couldn't afford her medications, so I'd paid. Remembered missing my son's championship game to work overtime for her treatment copays. Remembered everything differently now. Mr. Harrison pulled out another document sealed with wax, like something from another century. The primary bequest. He said, his voice catching slightly. He looked at me again, that same strange look like he was apologizing for something that hadn't happened yet. To my daughter, Alexandra Thompson, Wellington, Mr. Harrison read, his voice steady. Now professional, I leave the sum of $15 million. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that hadn't started yet. Alex made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob, her hand over her heart in practiced emotion. She'd always been good at performing grief when it benefited her. Mum knew I'd manage it wisely, she said to no one in particular, already texting her husband the news. She always said she was securing our futures. Of course this makes sense. I have the education, the connections, the experience to handle this kind of wealth properly. Her words stung worse than any slap. The implication clear that I, Violetta the nurse, who'd held our mother through 700 chemo sessions, couldn't possibly manage money. I felt my heart shatter in real time, each piece falling into my stomach, where they burned like swallowed glass. $15 million. Not even a mention of my name yet. I looked at my hands, the same hands that had learned to insert IVs at home, that had cleaned vomit from Mum's hair at 3 a.m, that had held hers when the pain got too bad for words. These hands apparently weren't worth remembering in her will. The room shifted around me. Aunt Dorothy wouldn't meet my eyes. Margaret's mouth had fallen open in shock. Even the mysterious young woman looked uncomfortable, shifting in her chair like she wanted to say something but couldn't. Alex continued celebrating, calling her husband, now loud enough for everyone to hear about their plans for a second home in the Bahamas. "Don't be dramatic, Violetta," Alex said, when she noticed me standing to leave. My legs shook, but I needed air, needed to be anywhere but here. Mum obviously had her reasons. She probably knew you'd just waste it on your kid's state school education anyway. Better to keep it with someone who understands wealth. I remembered every sacrifice then, like a movie playing in fast forward. My son's soccer championships, I'd missed 43 games over 3 years. My daughter's recitals, 8 of them, because Mum had treatment or needed me to stay overnight at the hospital. Date nights, I'd cancelled friendships, I'd let die a promotion I'd turned down because it meant less flexible hours for Mum's care. The humiliation burned worse than the betrayal. Alex's voice carried on speakerphone, her husband laughing about something, probably about me, the adopted daughter who'd foolishly thought love meant something. Aunt Dorothy fumbled with her purse, probably embarrassed to witness this. Margaret reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Pity was the last thing I could handle right now. I made it to the door before Mr. Harrison spoke again. "Please sit down, Ms. Violetta," he said, and something in his voice made me turn. "We're not finished here. There's more to be read." Alex rolled her eyes, probably worried I might get Mum's car, the ancient Honda with 200,000 miles and a broken air conditioner. But Mr. Harrison wasn't looking at Alex anymore. He pulled out another envelope, this one sealed with red wax Mum's initials pressed into it. This was to be read only after the initial bequest was announced, he said. "Your mother was very specific about the order of events. Very specific." Alex waved her hand, dismissively, still high on her millions. "Just give her whatever trinkets Mum left her, and let's wrap this up. I have a flight to catch. Some of us have actual lives to return to." But her voice carried a new edge, maybe sensing the room's shifting energy, the way even Aunt Dorothy sat forward now. Mr. Harrison broke the seal slowly, deliberately, like he was defusing a bomb. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Mum's handwriting covering both sides. But there was more in the envelope. A USB drive fell onto the table with a small click that sounded like a gun cocking. Alex's celebration finally stopped. Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses one more time, then read in a clear voice that carried across the suddenly silent room. "The $15 million referenced in the previous bequest comes with a single condition," he began. "Alexandra must correctly answer 5 questions about my life to receive this inheritance. These questions will prove she knows the mother who raised her, not just the wallet she came to expect." Alex laughed, but it sounded forced now. "This is ridiculous. Of course I know my mother. We talked all the time. Just last month we discussed my promotion. She was thrilled about my success." She shifted in her seat, designer bag sliding to the floor with a thud that made her flinch. "The questions are as follows." Mr. Harrison continued, ignoring Alex's protests. "Question 1. What was my first job before I married your father? Please answer now, Ms. Wellington." Alex straightened, confidence returning. "She was a teacher, obviously. She always talked about education, helped me with homework when I was young." "Incorrect," Mr. Harrison said quietly. "Your mother worked as a seamstress in a factory that made military uniforms. She started when she was 17, fresh from Poland, speaking barely any English. She worked there for 3 years before meeting your father at a dance hall where she'd made her own dress from fabric remnants." Alex's face changed colour, but she recovered quickly. "That's a trick question. She never mentioned that to me. How was I supposed to know about some job from before I was born? Next question. This is absurd." But her voice had lost its edge, replaced with something sharper, more desperate. Question 2. Mr. Harrison read. "What was my favourite song, the one I hummed while cooking Sunday dinners?" Alex grabbed her phone, probably trying to text someone for answers. But who would know? She stammered something about classical music, maybe Chopin because Mum was Polish. "The answer is Your Song by Elton John," Mr. Harrison said. "Your father sang it to her on their first date when his car radio was broken. She hummed it every Sunday for 40 years while making pierogi from scratch, Ms. Violetta." "I believe you know this song," I nodded, remembering Mum teaching me the words in the kitchen flour on our hands, love in her voice. Question 3. What was my biggest fear? Alex's confidence crumbled visibly now. She ventured that Mum feared death cancer being alone. All wrong. Mr. Harrison looked at the paper sadly. Your mother's biggest fear was being forgotten. She told Ms. Violetta this during treatment. She feared her stories would die with her, that no one would remember the girl from Warsaw who built a life from nothing. The mysterious young woman pulled out tissues from her folder, dabbing at her eyes. Even Aunt Dorothy had gone pale. Alex stood now, pacing her heels, clicking against the floor like a countdown. This is entrapment. She set me up. These are impossible questions about ancient history that doesn't matter anymore. Question 4. Mr. Harrison continued relentlessly. How did I get the scar on my left hand? Alex shouted that it was from cooking a kitchen accident, burning herself on the stove. She was getting desperate, throwing out answers like darts at a board she couldn't see. Your mother received that scar, Mr. Harrison read from the paper, protecting 3-year-old Violetta during a break-in. An intruder smashed the back door glass. Your mother grabbed the shards with her bare hands to shield the child she'd just adopted, the child she already loved as her own. She needed 23 stitches and never regretted a single one. I touched my temple where a tiny scar hid under my hairline, the one Mum said came from falling. Now I understood why she'd kiss that spot every night when I was young, why she'd cry sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking. The room spun with revelations I wasn't ready for. Final question. Mr. Harrison said, his voice gentler now. What was my real maiden name, the one I left behind in Poland? Alex had gone white. She whispered Thompson. Her mother's maiden name was Thompson. Everyone knew that. But even as she said it, she knew she was wrong. Kowalski, Mr. Harrison said simply. Maria Kowalski, daughter of Jan and Katarzyna Kowalski of Warsaw. She changed it when she became a citizen because people couldn't pronounce it. But she kept it on her prayer cards, her recipes, her heart. She taught Ms. Violetta to say it correctly in Polish. Would you say it for us, Violetta? I spoke Mum's real name in Polish, the way she'd taught me during those long hospital nights. The way it should sound with the soft W and the proper emphasis. Alex sank into her chair. That's not fair, she whispered. How was I supposed to know any of that? She never told me these things. Mr. Harrison pulled out the USB drive. Your mother knew you might say that. She recorded a video testimony 2 months before her death. She wanted everyone to see it if you failed the questions. Shall we watch it now? The TV was wheeled in before Alex could object. Though she tried threatening lawyers' lawsuits, everything her money could buy. But money couldn't buy her way out of this moment. The screen flickered to life, and Mum appeared frail but fierce, wearing the pale blue sweater I'd given her for her last birthday, the one that brought out her eyes. She was sitting in my living room, my kids' drawings visible on the refrigerator behind her. She looked directly at the camera at us, at the daughter who'd known her, and the one who'd never tried. If you're watching this, Mum said from the screen, her voice stronger than it had been in months, then the truth is finally being revealed. Alexandra, my biological daughter, you're probably angry right now, feeling tricked. But this isn't a trick. This is a mirror, and I'm sorry you don't like what you see in it. Mum paused, sipped water from the mug. I recognized the one my son made her in art class, with World's Best Grandma painted in crooked letters. For 37 years, I waited for you to ask me about my life, my real life. Not the life that started when I married your father, but the 24 years before that. You never asked about Poland, about my parents who died in poverty, about how I survived on bread and hope. The room was silent except for Alex's breathing, sharp and quick, like she was running from something. Mum continued, her eyes never leaving the camera. I tested you so many times, Alexandra. I left photo albums on the coffee table, played my favorite song when you visited, spoke Polish on the phone, hoping you'd ask to learn. You never did. You'd check your phone comment on the house needing updates, ask about your inheritance, even while I was still alive. Mum held up a notebook, pages filled with her careful handwriting. This is my diary from the last 3 years. Want to know what's in it? Every single day Violetta visited. 714 hospital visits. She held the basin when I vomited, cleaned me when I couldn't reach the bathroom in time, sang Polish lullabies when the pain kept me awake. Where were you, my biological miracle? Alex stood to leave, but Aunt Dorothy surprisingly blocked her path. You need to hear this, she said quietly. We all do. Alex fell back into her chair like a marionette with cut strings. On screen, Mum had started crying, but her voice remained steady. Violetta learned Polish to speak with me in my mother tongue. Did you know that, Alexandra? She downloaded apps, practiced at night after working 12-hour shifts, just so I could tell my stories in the language of my childhood. You complained when I spoke Polish, said it was rude, exclusive. but Violetta understood that sometimes love means meeting someone in their most comfortable space. The mysterious young woman stood then, walking to the screen. Mum noticed her, smiled, gestured for her to come closer. "This is Sophia," Mum explained. "She's the nurse Violetta hired with her own money when the insurance nurses failed to show. Sophia has something to say too." Sophia faced the camera, her voice accented but clear. "I watched for 6 months. Miss Alexandra visited twice. She brought flowers that Ms. Violetta had to care for because Maria couldn't. She hired nurses who didn't speak English, who left Maria alone for hours. Ms. Violetta worked extra shifts to pay for my services' proper care. She sold her car, took the bus in Chicago winter to afford Maria's medicines. Mum took back the narrative, her energy fading, but her determination solid. The money, Alexandra, isn't really about the money. Your father's construction company did well, yes, but the real wealth came from Violetta's father." Surprised. "You never knew Violetta's biological father left life insurance, that I invested it, grew it waiting to see which daughter would love me, for me, not my net worth." She coughed then, that wet sound I remembered too well, but pushed through. "I pretended to be poorer than I was. I watched you calculate my worth at every visit, saw you measuring rooms while I slept. Heard you on the phone with realtors while I was supposedly napping. You were spending my money before my body was cold. But Violetta, she was spending her money to keep me warm." The video shifted, showing documents, bank statements, medical bills. Mum's voice overlaid the images. "Here's what Violetta paid for my care, $347,000 over 3 years. Here's what Alexandra contributed. $1,500 in flowers that died like her promises to visit more. Here's Violetta's credit card statements maxed out for experimental treatments. Here's Alexandra's Instagram from those same dates, posting from beaches and parties." Mum appeared on screen again, looking directly at us, but really at Alex. "You want to know why I'm doing this? Because love isn't measured in blood, it's measured in presence. Violetta was present. She learnt my recipes, my language, my fears. You learnt my bank account balance. So the money goes to the daughter who knows my heart, not the one who only knew my assets." The screen showed one more scene. Me asleep in the hospital chair next to Mum's bed, holding her hand even in sleep. Mum's voice soft now, almost breaking. "This is love, Alexandra. This is what you missed while planning your next vacation. This is the inheritance that actually matters. The money is just paper. The love Violetta showed me, that's gold." The video ended with Mum looking directly at the camera one last time. "Alexandra, I forgive you for not loving me the way I needed, but I won't reward you for it. Violetta, my true daughter, you already have everything that mattered to me. My stories, my recipes, my language, my love. Now you'll have the means to give your children the life you deserved from the start." The screen went dark. The room stayed silent for a full minute before Alex exploded like a volcano that had been dormant too long. She threatened lawsuits, contested wills, investigations into undue influence. Her husband was already on speakerphone with 3 different law firms. Mr. Harrison pulled out more documents prepared for this storm. "Your mother anticipated your reaction," he said calmly, spreading papers across the table. "She had 3 independent psychiatric evaluations confirming mental competence. She had the will reviewed by 5 separate law firms. She recorded multiple videos over 2 years showing consistent intent. And Miss Wellington, there's the matter of the documents you tried to have her sign while she was medicated." Alex went pale again. "That was a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "Mum was confused about her finances. I was trying to help, but Mr. Harrison had receipts, literally. Power of attorney papers filed when Mum was on morphine rejected by the court. Attempts to transfer property titles during chemo treatments. A paper trail of greed that made even Aunt Dorothy gasp." "I need air," Alex said, but it came out like a whimper. "This isn't over. You manipulated her," she pointed at me, finally acknowledging my existence. "You turned her against her real daughter. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? Playing the martyr, the devoted daughter act, making me look bad. For the first time since this started, I found my voice. It wasn't an act, Alexandra. Every bedpan I emptied, every IV I changed, every night I slept on hospital floors, that was real. You want to know what else was real? The 43 soccer games I missed. The 8 recitals I couldn't attend. The promotion I turned down. The marriage that crumbled because I was never home. All real. I stood facing my sister for maybe the first time as equals. You had 37 years to know her. I had 31 minus the first 3 when I was too young to remember. But in those 31 years, I learned her mother's name in Poland, her father's profession, the song he sang before he died in the war. I learnt she came here with $17 and a prayer. Did you know any of that? Alex's phone rang. Her husband asking about the money, the timeline, the liquidity. She turned away to answer, and in that moment, everyone saw who she really was. Even while confronting the loss of $15 million, she prioritized the call over the conversation. Classic Alexandra, performing even her grief for an audience that paid well. Aunt Dorothy stood then, surprising everyone. I have something to say. Maria was my sister, but Violetta was her daughter. I watched for 40 years. Every Christmas, Violetta made the Polish dishes. Every Easter, she attended sunrise mass with Maria, even though she worked night shift. Alexandra, you sent gift cards. Generic ones. From your assistant. Margaret added her voice. When Maria was diagnosed, Violetta called me crying, not about the unfairness to herself, but worried about how to make her mum comfortable. She researched every treatment, every trial, every possibility. Alexandra. You sent a text saying you were sorry to hear the news. A text. Even Sophia spoke up her English, careful but clear. I see many families in hospice. Rich families, poor families. Money doesn't predict love. Ms. Violetta gave love that money cannot buy. She learnt medical procedures to save money for treatments. She sang when Maria couldn't sleep. She held her during seizures. Where were you? Ms. Alexandra Alex's armor cracked completely. You were never real family anyway. She spat at me, the venom in her voice pure and undiluted. You were Mum's charity case, her good deed. She kept you out of guilt, nothing more. Dad felt sorry for you, the orphan with the sob story. You were never supposed to get anything. You were supposed to stay grateful and quiet. The words should have hurt, but they didn't. Because behind Alex on the dark TV screen, I could see our reflection. Me surrounded by people who'd witnessed my love. Her alone, even with millions promised, and now lost. The real inheritance had already been distributed years ago in hospital rooms and kitchen tables in Polish words and held hands. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat again. There's one more matter. Ms. Violetta, your mother wanted you to know that she left you a choice. You can accept the full inheritance, or you can choose to give Ms. Wellington the family home and your mother's jewelry valued at approximately $700,000. The choice is yours alone. I looked at Alex, mascara running down her cheeks, designer dress wrinkled from her collapse. She'd been my sister for 31 years. Even if she'd never let me forget, I wasn't blood. Her children, my nephews I barely knew, deserved something from their grandmother. And maybe somewhere under all that greed and spite was a girl who'd lost her way when money became more important than memories. She can have the house, I said quietly, and Mum's jewelry. But not because she deserves it, because Mum would want her grandchildren to have something from her, even if their mother never knew her. The jewelry has history stories. Maybe Alexandra's children will ask about them someday, and she'll have to learn the answers. Alex stood abruptly grabbing her bag. I don't want your pity or your charity. Keep it all. I hope you choke on it. She walked to the door, then turned back. You know what, Mum was right about one thing. I never knew her. But you know what else I never wanted to? She was an immigrant who got lucky, married up, and forgot where she came from. You're perfect for each other. The door slammed behind her. Her heels clicked down the hallway, fading like a bad dream. Mr. Harrison handed me a folder thick with documents I'd need to sign. The mysterious Sophia approached, handed me her own folder. These are your mother's medical records, she said softly. She wanted you to have them. Her last words, her last thoughts, they were all about you. How proud you made her. My phone buzzed again. The babysitter needing to leave. My kids wondering where I was. Real life calling me back. But now it would be a different life. Not rich. I'd never be the kind of rich Alex understood. But secure. Able to pay for college, fix the car, maybe take a vacation that wasn't to a hospital waiting room. Aunt Dorothy hugged me on her way out. You were always her daughter, she whispered. From the day she brought you home, you were hers. Biology is just science. Love is the real magic. Even Margaret, usually so composed, was crying. Your mother knew exactly what she was doing, she said. She planned this like a general plans a battle. She won. Mr. Harrison walked me to my car, the ancient Toyota with the broken mirror and the engine that knocked. This'll be different now, he said, gesturing at the car. You can buy something reliable. But I knew I'd keep it a little longer. It had carried me to 700 hospital visits. It had earned its retirement, not a trade-in. As I drove home, I thought about Mum's last words to me, the ones in Polish I'd finally understood. My daughter, my heart, my choice. At the time, I'd thought she was confused, mixing up her languages. Now I understood. She'd chosen me first when I was 3 and scared again when she was dying and needed someone who'd love her more than money. 3 months have passed since that day in Mr. Harrison's office. I used part of the inheritance to establish the Maria Kowalski Memorial Foundation for cancer patients who can't afford treatment. The first check we wrote was for a single mother of 3, working 2 jobs, sleeping in hospital chairs. I knew that exhaustion in her eyes had worn it myself for 3 years. I paid off nursing school loans for 100 students, remembering my own struggle with debt while trying to save Mom. Each one received a letter telling them about Maria Kowalski from Warsaw, who believed education was the only inheritance that couldn't be stolen. They send me updates, paliases, sometimes, photos from graduations, first days at hospitals. Mum would have loved knowing she helped them. We moved my kids and I to a modest house near Lake Michigan. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, where I can make pierogi without bumping into walls. The realtor kept showing me mansions, but I wanted a home, not a statement. There's a garden where I'm growing the tomatoes Mum loved, the Polish variety she'd smuggle seeds for in her luggage. My son plays travel soccer now. I've never missed a game, not one. My daughter takes piano lessons from a teacher who speaks Polish, connecting her to a heritage she's just beginning to understand. They visit their grandmother's grave with me every Sunday, leaving flowers and Polish cookies they've learnt to make from her recipes, I translated. I found Mum's journals while cleaning out her house, the one Alex never came back for. 23 volumes dating back to when she first arrived in America. The pages detail everything: her struggles with English, meeting Dad at that dance, choosing me at the orphanage. One entry dated the day she brought me home simply says, "Found my daughter today. Biology made Alexandra. Choice made Violetta. Choice is stronger." Alex contested the will as promised. Her lawyers filed 17 different motions, each one dismissed faster than the last. The judge, after reviewing all evidence, took only 10 minutes to decide. He said it was the clearest case of testamentary intent he'd seen in 30 years. Alex's husband divorced her 6 months later, apparently only interested in the money she'd promised him was coming. I sent Alex a Christmas card last week. Inside was an old photo Mum had hidden showing Alex as a baby in Mum's arms, both smiling. I wrote a simple message. She loved you. She just loved me too. The door is open if you ever want to know who she really was. The response came via her lawyer, a cease and desist order. Don't contact me again. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Last week I met another daughter at the cancer support group I run now. She'd been caring for her father while her brother lived abroad, sending money but never visiting. She was exhausted, broke guilty for resenting the unfairness. I told her our story showed her that love isn't about fair. It's about showing up when showing up is hard. She cried, then laughed, then signed up for our respite care program. Sophia still visits sometimes. She became a hospice nurse, inspired by what she witnessed with Mum and me. She says she tells our story to families struggling with similar dynamics, how love isn't democratic, doesn't divide equally among children. Some children earn it through presence, others lose it through absence. It's painful but true. I visited Mum's grave yesterday with fresh flowers and updates. I told her about the foundation, the students, the garden. I spoke in Polish, the language she taught me in her final years. An elderly Polish woman overheard, approached me after. She knew my mother remembered her from the Polish church. She was proud of you, she said, always talking about her daughter, the nurse. Never mentioned another daughter, and now I understood why. My kids are learning Polish now properly from a tutor. They want to understand the songs I sing while cooking, the words I whisper when I tuck them in. They're proud of their grandmother's story, the woman who came from nothing and built everything. They know about the will, about their aunt, who chose money over memories. They've learned early that family isn't just DNA. The foundation is hosting a gala next month. We've raised $2 million for treatment assistance. I named it after Mum's Polish name, the one Alex never knew. Kowalski means blacksmith in Polish, someone who shapes metal through fire and force. Mum shaped her life the same way, through the fire of immigration and the force of will. She shaped me too, choosing to love a scared 3-year-old who needed a mother. I still work as a nurse 3 days a week now instead of 6. The other days I spend managing the foundation, being present for my children, living the life Mum wanted for me. I don't drive a Tesla or wear designer clothes, but I can pay for groceries without checking my balance, can say yes when my kids need something, can sleep without worrying about tomorrow. The money hasn't made me different, just safer. I still shop sales, still clip coupons from habit. Mum's voice echoes when I consider wasteful purchases. She lived simply not from poverty, but from wisdom, understanding that things don't create happiness. Presence does. Being there does. Showing up when life gets ugly does. The $15 million wasn't really about the money. It was Mum's final test, her last lesson about what matters. Alex thought she'd won when she heard the amount, but she'd already lost by not knowing our mother's real name. I thought I'd lost when I heard Alex got everything, but I'd already won 700 hospital visits ago. The money just made the lesson impossible to ignore. Love isn't measured in blood, Mum said in her final video. It's measured in presence. Every day I understand that more. When I hold my children, when I help patients, when I fund treatments for strangers, I'm present. That's the inheritance that matters, the one that compounds daily, the one that can't be contested in court. Mum knew exactly what she was doing with that will. She gave the money to the daughter who never asked for it because that daughter had already given everything. She taught Alex a lesson about love being earned, not inherited. And she taught me that sometimes justice comes dressed as a secret clause, read aloud in a mahogany room, changing everything with 5 simple questions about a Polish woman's beautiful, complicated life. So if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, overlooked for the one who shed blood, but not burden, remember this story. Remember that love keeps score differently than DNA, that presence outweighs ancestry, that choosing to stay when you could leave to care, when you could ignore to learn someone's language, when you could demand they speak yours, that's what makes you family. The rest is just paperwork. What would you have done in my position? Would you have given Alex anything after years of absence and that final cruel revelation? Share your thoughts below, and if this story touched your heart, please leave a comment about family, the kind you're born into and the kind you choose. Like this video if you believe love is measured in presence, not presence. Subscribe to hear more stories about family's inheritance and the complicated truth about blood versus choice. And share this with someone who needs to hear that their sacrifices are seen, their love is valid, and their presence matters more than any amount of money ever could. Thank you for listening to my mother's story to mine, and for understanding that sometimes the best inheritance isn't what's in the will, but what's in the heart. May you all find the family that chooses you back, the love that shows up when life gets hard, and the inheritance that can't be measured in dollars, but in moments of pure present love.